Welcome back, everybody. Once again, this is Mark Lawrence, and we're all set to go against the spread on this weekend's NBA and college basketball cards. And as we always do here on Proline TV on the Against the Spread podcast, we're going to welcome in our cast of experts joining us from Las Vegas. We've got a dynamic duo. First, Jim Feist, the legend himself from Las Vegas. Jim, how are you doing these days?
I'm doing very well, Mark. And yes, thank you. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm just terrific. Thank you. Knock on wood, everything is okay so far. We're battling some wildfires down here. It's sort of what I think they get out in Los Angeles, but not my way. A little bit more on the other side of the state, but kind of scary, to say the least.
I didn't know
wildfires in Florida. Really? Where is it? The Everglades?
The Everglades, exactly. Yep.
Wow. Poor alligators.
I thought the Everglades would be too moist, too much water out there for that. But really, that's interesting.
You know, I kind of think that I live right on the border, right on the cusp of the Everglades, right out of Fort Lauderdale. And they managed to burn fires under control. They need to do that for the environment for some reason or another. And they start them, they control them, and, they force them out. But this came unexpected. It wasn't a planned fire. It was just a fire that started some way, somehow. And it's really, really ugly, to say the least. But I know in California, they have their fair share of them. That's for sure.
Well, and they don't have them under control. That's for sure, too.
No, they do not. No.
I always hear these weird things going on there in Florida regarding the Everglades, regarding, well, there's so many snakes out there, and they've put these other creatures out there to kill the snakes. And then there's other things out there that are killing other creatures because there's too many of them. I mean, what's going on there? What is there too many snakes? Are there too many? What I know what the problem is with the snakes, but has that been rectified yet? Are there still too many snakes?
Well, I think what they attempted to do was they opened up alligator Alcatraz down here about a year ago, and it got out of control. I'm just being facetious here, obviously, with the all the problems that they were having with the immigrants. But they closed that facility up, and now I don't know what the real reason is, Greg. I don't know if it's under control or what the issue is or whatnot. I'm not so much into the wetlands per se, but I do know that if I happen to leave my car out overnight at times in the summer, it will be filled with dust, just covered with dust. Kind of weird.
Dust? Where's the dust coming from?
Well, I say I live on the cusp of the Everglades, okay, and we will get Everglades. It will start my way as opposed to over on the on what would be the West Coast. I'm here on the East Coast, and there will be fires that'll start here as well, coming out of the Everglades.
How far north of Boca are you?
I'm about
or West Palm.
I'm about 30 or 40 miles north.
So you're north of West Palm as well.
Yes,
okay.
Right.
Huh. Okay.
They don't seem to get hit too much there. Andy, how are you doing? I didn't welcome you in officially.
That's
to the
okay.
show.
I had some connectivity issues, which I think I have resolved.
Oh, nice.
All is well here. Enjoying the end of the college basketball season. The resumption of, NBA is so tough to watch. It's the handicap as well, especially with all the attention being paid to the tanking, and especially in situations where teams are removing their players like late in the game in games that are competitive. And that's an issue, and it makes it very difficult to, it almost means that in-game wagering is perhaps the way to go, and you close your position out before the end of the third quarter. So maybe you can bet quarters rather than full games or halves now.
Well, I know a lot of conspiracy theorists, when they remove those starters, will right away start talking tanking.
NBA needs to do something about that. They need to do something like, okay, if you make the playoffs, you know where you're going to pick. If you're one of the 14 teams that misses the playoffs, okay, they're going to draw numbers out of a hat. So in other words, and you're all going to have you're going to have an equal number of balls in the receptacle there, so that if you finish one spot out of the playoffs, you're going to have the same chance of getting the number one pick as the team that finished 15 games out of the playoffs.
Andy, we have to introduce you to Adam Silver, okay?
Yeah.
We only got about an hour, and we want to make this about an hour. So let's hop right into what we've got on tap here for today for everybody.
Before
First
we
of
do
all-
that, I have to interrupt because
Yes.
this is the video I found out. So we won't play this very long,
Oh,
but this
okay.
is what I think one of the things I saw.
Florida are a huge threat to the local environment and economy. And of course, people are trying to deal with it. Still, let's be honest. The current efforts are just a drop in the ocean. The population of these snakes in Florida, especially in the Everglades, has already grown into the tens of thousands, maybe even more. Nobody really knows how many of them are hiding out in the thickets around the swamps. Meanwhile, the annual Python Challenge takes out 100 or 2 snakes. Since 2017, state agencies have removed more than 10,000 of them from the wild. Sounds like a lot, but it's still not enough. So what do you do in a case like this? For example, drop millions or even more mice across the Everglades and most of Florida? History and the island of Guam know this is a working method against invasive snakes, and it really could change the situation in the state. But for better or worse? That's another question, and we're going to answer it today.
So there you go. They're
That
going
was a great PR move for the state of Florida, Greg. I'm sure they-
Evidently, the Everglades is snake bit.
You know, that's a great opening for a show about sports betting. I don't
Because we've all been snake bit one time
Yes.
or another throughout our
Yeah,
gambling
well,
careers.
that's a good line. Thank you.
Exactly right.
great.
Marlon Perkins, where are you when we need you?
Hey, I like this still photo of Andy.
Oh,
If we could just capture that. Let me see if I could capture that, so I could save it forever. Andy doesn't know what we're talking about, but
Neither do I. He's talking
you
about
can see-
Avatar.
you can see how he's still right now, Andy.
yeah.
See,
I'm
He's
gonna
not moving.
change. Yeah. I'm gonna change it now.
There it is. I've just saved that picture now, Andy.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna send it to you. So for now on, you could use that if you like instead of
Oh, you don't like the one with the two
That's okay, but it gets a little old, of course. So you might
Okay.
want to, throw in some tough guy photos.
All
See,
right,
that's a
yeah,
tough guy
I
photo.
gotta redo this here again.
Anyway, okay.
I don't know what
Right,
it is.
guys,
This is the
well,
only place where I have
nonsense.
issues with the
One thing
connection.
about the show is we're starting at the bottom, so is it at the end? It would be at the top.
Yeah, it seems to go the other way here some way, somehow. But let's get to the top of things here, guys. I want to welcome everybody watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe and the like buttons down below. Ring the bell, if you will. And Greg, if you would, remind our listeners out there what we're doing right now with regard to our community page and our best bet plays that are available to everybody listening or watching.
Yeah, if you go to our community page, that is a great way where you can contact us at any time. Let us know anything that's on your mind. It's also where we'll post up things of the nature like that's where we'll have our picks. Matter of fact, right now, Mark is posting picks because we have a few of our members that have signed up for Mark's monthly picks, and these are discounted picks. Matter of fact, I know we haven't changed the pricing, so you can check it out there over on our website on Proline TV. And the best way to do that, like I said, is you can also check out the membership page on the site as well. And when you do that, you'll be able to find out what we have available through our membership opportunities. And that is one of the things that you want to take advantage of because it's for a very inexpensive price. And you get Mark's top picks every week, all month for your membership dollars, whatever it is that whatever package that you decide that you want to join for. So yeah, it's another way of making sure that you get on top of things. And you have all sorts of packages, obviously, over at playbooksports.com. We have the links in the description for that. You can also check out jimfeist.com for Jim's packages on his website. We have links in the description for that. But if you just want to see some special picks right here at Proline TV for a discounted price, that's where you can check it out under our membership page on our site.
Well, we like to say we've got you covered, and we do have you blanketed and covered for sure, especially with March Madness coming about. And guys, let's hop into it. The first foremost topic about March Madness this time of the year, less than 3 weeks away we are from Selection Sunday, are the bubble teams, the teams that are right now sitting on the cusp, whether or not they're going to be in this tournament or not. I'm going to run by some teams here that I think are the 6 most popular teams. And you guys, if you want to opinionate on these teams or whatnot, or you want to add some teams or say these teams are ridiculous. But right now it looks, I'm talking about Missouri, Santa Clara, TCU, Southern Cal, VCU in California. Jim, any ideas on any other thoughts on it? Some teams that are sitting on the bubble right now as we're doing the show.
You asking me?
Yes.
You asking me? You want to know what I think?
The sound broke up and I didn't pick up the first part of that.
Well, are there any teams that you see right now, just disregard what it is that the 6 teams I threw out there, any teams you see right now that figure to be sitting on the bubble and they're going to have to play lights out to close out the season?
Well, you would have to say that last night, I mean, I thought St. John's was one of those teams. And then last night, I don't know they showed up in a different state and didn't play the game. That was pretty bad against Connecticut. So that would be one. There's going to be a lot of those teams like that because these bubble teams don't have the quality of athletes because of the nil and the portal, to bump up. So we're going to see stuff like that. We're talking about 68 teams, and Greg and I talked about this the other day on our Dom DeMarco show, that there just aren't 68 teams that can compare and compete because of the nil and because of the portal. The top teams, maybe the top 20 teams, are just too damn good for them because they took all the athletes and they spent all the money and they have the money to spend, and they did, and now they just don't fit. So we're really looking at a total imbalance now, where I think in the first round we're going to see teams not being able to compete like we used to be able, and so the teams that are plus 17 or plus 14 or stuff, they're not going to be able to compete because the balance of power has switched too much.
Andy, your thoughts on the bubble? Any teams here that are worthy or we should mention and keep an eye on between now and Selection Sunday?
Well, Missouri, I think, has played well enough down the stretch in a very tough conference where they're going to get, single digit, possibly close to 10 bids, along with, the Big Ten and the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the SEC have been by far the best conferences this year, with significantly multiple bids, probably at least 6 or more from each of those conferences, and closer to 10 for a couple of them. I think Missouri has done enough late in the season to win. Maybe some of these teams will need to win their first conference tournament game. Santa Clara is an interesting game because there was a tight race at the top of the West Coast Conference. Gonzaga 15-1 before last night, and they're now 16-1 because they avenged their only conference loss to Portland about a month ago with a solid win last night. The 2 teams that were right behind Gonzaga at I think they were 14-2 were St. Mary's and Santa Clara, who played last night at St. Mary's. And I had a nice play on St. Mary's because of a couple of factors. It figured that the West Coast Conference probably gets 2, but not 3 teams in there. And the winner of the game last night was in a position to almost secure that number 2 bid. If it was Santa Clara, they probably would have gotten it because they would have swept the season series. They beat St. Mary's earlier. St. Mary's, if they win, they are 1-1 against Santa Clara now. They play Gonzaga at home on Saturday. They could now theoretically win and tie Gonzaga for the number 1 seed, even though number 1 seed would, in the West Coast Conference, they would both be 17 and 16-2 if St. Mary's pulls the upset. However, they use the net for dividing, those NET rankings, and Gonzaga has a nice solid lead there. So Gonzaga would get the number 1 seed in the West Coast Conference tournament. And I don't know if they changed the structure, but the top 2 teams used to get like a double bye in that tournament for many years. So I think St. Mary's is in. I think barring an appearance in the championship game of the West Coast, Santa Clara probably doesn't make it. If they end up playing St. Mary's again in the semifinals and they win, that might help a 3rd team get in there. If they end up playing Gonzaga and beating Gonzaga in the tournament, whether it be the semifinals, they'd be the number 3 team, it'd be finals. I think Santa Clara could get in there. So I'd say right now it's St. Mary's is in there safely, I would think. but Santa Clara has an opportunity with a good performance in the conference tournament. And I say again, reaching the final game, even if they lose to Gonzaga, they might overtake St. Mary's. So I think that's another team on the bubble. I'm not quite so sure about a team like a West Virginia. They play nicely at home. They're not all that strong on the road. San Diego State, again, I'm not sure that the Mountain West this year gets more than one bid, and that might go to Utah State or San Diego State, whoever wins that conference.
Well, Greg, in line with this, I know you love futures betting. You love to look for these dogs, these attractive-looking dogs at big prices, and now's the time to do that, as opposed to when the draw is made and you're going to get half of the price when these teams come about. Any of these teams that are either on the bubble or teams that have caught your eye with regard to which teams are good bets for March Madness at this particular time?
Well, we'd have to go pretty far back here. So, look, I think there are several. Right now, if I had not put a single wager on a future, I'd be starting right here. I think these teams can all go on Final Four runs. Arkansas, they seem to be playing, their best basketball of the year. We know Calipari can coach. I think this is a better Arkansas team than his team last year. Nebraska, we know how good they've been this year, and they're a strong 50-1. Now, of course, you could also take a look at their Final Four odds, which I would definitely do with these teams. So you're probably, matter of fact, if we're looking at Final Four odds, let's see, you're still getting like 8-1 here for Arkansas, 12-1 Michigan State. Michigan State has one of the best point guards in the country, and the type of guard and they have three other players that were on the team last year. Again, very, very unusual to have that sort of leftover talent in today's game. So that's why I think it's going to help them come tournament time. And we know Izzo can coach. So Michigan State, Arkansas, these teams, even Gonzaga, if they get a good bracket, Nebraska, all these teams, I think the ones that stick out the most, though, if I had to just say, I'd say Michigan State definitely would be one that would stick out the most. St. John's, look, what happened last night was actually kind of predictable. I mean, St. John's had beaten UConn already. They're going to play again in a rematch, more than likely, in a couple of weeks in the Big East tournament. Of course, they're not going to be up for the game. They've already beat them, and they know they're going to face them again.
They'd won 13 in a row, so a loss is really not that bad. In fact, they now, according to most of the bracketologies, already are seeded a 4 or a 5.
Yeah. So, they're not going to get a real high seed anyway. So, yeah, I mean, it's all about winning the Big East championship. That's what's important for St. John's. So they're still a really good 17-1. And then you got, North Carolina beat Duke at home. They've got talent. They've made these runs before. Wisconsin, I think, is another dangerous team. So yeah, this is what's going to be fun when we talk on the Monday after Selection Sunday. We do our special show.
Yep.
And we go over all the brackets. It's going to be so interesting to find out which of these teams because there's like 10 of them that we just talked about here, that one or two of them will have legitimate chances to make a run to the Final Four. And we just got to find out which are the best teams for you, the viewer, to take advantage.
Greg, where's Texas Tech in the Final? Oh, there it is, right there, 30-1.
Yep, and that's just the Final Four now.
Because they've been able to play well from the loss of Toppin.
And they're at Iowa State on Saturday. That's a big test.
That's a big test, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to tell us whether or not they can handle it. And matter of fact, we've got Michigan at Illinois tomorrow night. We have Kansas at Arizona on Saturday. We've got Villanova at St. John. Speaking of the Big East, remember we talked about Villanova last week, and they had the opportunity to finally, check a mark. Hey, we got a big win. They get blown out at home. And yet they're still considered a 6-7 seed. It's ridiculous. So they got another chance at St. John's on Saturday, and Arkansas at Florida on Saturday night.
That's
we
a big
talked about
game.
how hot Arkansas is right now.
Yeah.
So there's some really big games to keep an eye on, and bubble games to keep an eye on. San Diego State at New Mexico on Saturday. San Diego State with a huge win last night against Utah State because they had lost at Colorado State.
That's 2 in a row for Utah State, isn't it, Greg?
Yeah.
They lost? Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And I just think that's one of those teams that knows they're in the tournament. and now they're just kind of getting bored. They're just waiting for the tournament to begin. They're in it. They're not going to be wiped out just because of a couple of bad losses, because it's Utah State's the cream of the crop right now in that conference. There's nothing they could do wrong to get to the tournament. It's all the other teams that are vying for those final 2 or 3 spots, and San Diego State and New Mexico are 2 of those teams, and they're going to play on Saturday. Nebraska's at USC on Saturday, and that's a huge game for the Trojans, because I don't think USC should be anywhere near the tournament. And it's proof of what Jim was just saying that we talked about, how this, when you take a look at the last 20 teams that are getting in, they shouldn't even be in the tournament. And USC in this bracketology, ESPN bracketology, is a first 4 out. I mean, and they've just continued to do nothing. And they've had injured players and all that stuff. So I think, so you know what? If you want to go into the tournament, beat Nebraska on Saturday. Why don't you do that? Why don't you, just like Villanova, if you really want to prove to everybody you're really good, beat St. John's on Saturday.
Jim, let me ask you this question. Houston Cougars took 2 losses in a row. Rather rare for that basketball team. Real rare error.
Three in a row now.
Mark, it was actually 3.
3. Okay, right. 3.
First time since 2017 that the program's lost 3 straight.
Do you feel that helps Houston get ready for this, for the upcoming NCAA tournament season, Jim? I know some coaches don't like to be going in there on these wild winning streaks, but losing 3 in a row, is that what Kelvin Sampson would want from this basketball team?
No, I think it hurts their confidence a lot. They didn't expect to lose any of those games, and they played their asses off, and it just wasn't enough. Obviously their shortfall is they run into these streaks where they just can't score. And, they're a very strong defensive ball club, but they occasionally run into periods where they just can't score. And then you put it all on the defense, and that you can't do that. They had the same problem last year where they ran into streaks like that, but they did make the final game and almost won it all. But no, I think this kills their confidence. I don't know if they can get it back or not. I know Calvin Sampson is a great coach, but there's some very strong teams that are coming in with a lot of confidence, including the champion from last year, Florida. Yes. That we don't. A lot of people don't talk about Florida. I don't know why, but they're still ranked very high and could do it again. So no, I don't think it helps them at all, losing 3 games in a row.
Well, I tried to step in front of Florida last night, and I was reminded, don't do it. This basketball team is cooking right now.
By the way, there was another – see, we just talked about it. Texas, according to ESPN bracketology, they're one of the last teams to skip the first 4. They had an opportunity at home against Florida to prove to everybody whether they should be in the tournament, and they failed the test. Yeah. So I just, again, I'm not saying that other teams deserve to be favored over these teams we're talking about. I'm just saying this is just proof. None of these teams that are getting into the tournament that are even getting buys or that are 6 seeds or 8 seeds, they shouldn't even be there. They're not that good. They haven't beaten anybody.
Well, one of the things that I know that we keep talking about home field and home court, it's not the same as it was a decade ago, where home court was so much stronger than it is now. And maybe that's because of the convenience of travel and whatever it is. When you put a team on their home court, sometimes, it's not that much of an advantage because the road teams are not that inconvenienced by traveling. Now, so of course, sometimes weather can really cause havoc with the team that's on the road, the planes and the buses and everything they have to take. But under normal situations, we don't have those home court advantages that used to be 5, 6, 7 points. It not even close.
No, it's not close. In fact, it's really waned down to the point where, as you mentioned, Jim, it's almost not even a factor in certain matchups and certain games. There was a time I can remember going way back in school when I would read the gold sheet and they would assign home court values to basketball teams. And they were almost always 3 or 4. I don't know if it mattered then or if they didn't look that deep or hard into it. But right now, with all the analytics that are out there today, the value that they put into home courts really it wavers between teams. You see the Kenny White power rankings and the disparities that he has in these home courts. I mean, you'll find one team with 6.5 points, another team with 1 point. So, it comes to be NCAA tournament time. What I used to always do is I would look at how these teams fared more on the road than I did at home, because that's where they're going to be taking off to, onto the road for the NCAA basketball tournament. Whether or not it's going to work out that way, it remains to be seen.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the parity in college basketball with the transfer portal and the NIL, so that the teams that struggle to field a deep roster are always, or have been always, at a disadvantage on the road. Now those teams are able to field deeper rosters, so they can play better on the road, because when they have to call on guys 6, 7, and 8, they're a much better caliber talent than they were in the past. And that's why we used to often see teams that would be on the road, and they'd be like a 7-point underdog, and they might have a 2-point lead at the half, and they end up losing by 13 because they don't have the depth in the second half to match the home team. Well, now those teams have that depth, and they can win on the road.
Yeah, real good point, Andy. Real good point. Let me ask you guys another key critical stat when it comes to handicapping the NCAA tournament. This is almost a stat that applies once you're in the tournament, that you've taken into the tournament with you, and it becomes, I think, a critically important stat that is often overlooked, and it's margin of victory. Right now, the team that leads the country in margin of victory is Gonzaga. They win their games 20.2 points a game. Michigan right on their heels at 20.5. Greg, what value do you put into average margin of victory? I know Gonzaga gets their margin of victory because of the weaker conference they play in, but you can't say that about Michigan because they're in the burly Big Ten. How much weight do you put into average margin of victory for these basketball teams?
Not a lot, except it did open everybody's eyes when Michigan, for a good percentage of their good matchups, quality teams, were able to just annihilate these teams by 20, 30, 40 points. That's something we haven't really seen quite a bit. So that definitely means something. But then you do wonder, because they only lost one game before they played Duke, and you do wonder, will that hurt them if they don't have enough close wins?
Yeah.
So when they play a team like Duke, that might have been the best thing for them. And we talked about it last week. Whoever loses that game, maybe they could use that to their advantage, and maybe Michigan can use that to their advantage more than Duke could have, because they're just not in a lot of close games. And they realized, hey, we did a few things wrong, and this is what we got to do to make sure when these games do come down to the wire that we do these things correctly. So I would look at it as a positive, obviously, because it shows you that you're immensely talented. But it could be a negative. So maybe the best thing that could happen for Michigan is to get into some really close games here. And again, maybe even starting tonight or tomorrow night, or continuing tomorrow night with their trip to Illinois.
Well, it's not a big problem to lose in the regular season, because if you're going to get in, you're going to get in. Now, the coaching is important. And a lot of these teams are brand new in the beginning because they have these new kids coming in, and they've got to blend. And Greg just pointed out, there's a benefit of knowing how to win when you get the apple in your throat. And the next play is going to determine who's going to win the game. And when you constantly winning by 20, 30 points, that doesn't do you a lot of good when the games are close. So I think Greg's point is good, that maybe it is actually beneficial to have a lot of close losses, and not losses necessarily, but maybe occasionally losses. But you don't get any extra special benefit from winning every game by 20 points, because then you're going to get in a close game here and there and not know how to handle it. So there's
a real good point you bring up.
Well, it's like if you're constantly shooting holes in one on a golf course and you have to hit a 2-foot putt to win, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, that becomes a 6-footer.
Mark, to your question as far as margin of victory, I like to break it down several ways: conference versus non-conference, home versus road versus neutral to see if there's a significant difference. I mean, if you're winning by 18 points at home and you're averaging by 14 points on the road, that's a pretty good indicator that you're an outstanding team and you can win and win decisively wherever you're playing. Now, as far as it perhaps both Greg and Jim alluded to this, the close games, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more major teams or top-rated teams do what Duke and Michigan did this past weekend, and that is schedule late season games at neutral courts against outstanding opponent where you're going to be tested by the kind of team you're going to have to face, certainly if you make the Elite Eight and perhaps even a little earlier depending upon the draw in the NCAA tournament. Because, even the conference tournament, remember, you're going up against teams that you played once or twice during the season. So it's not going to really prove anything, even if it's in a close game necessarily as much as if you're in the NCAA tournament and you're facing a top-rated team that's very competitive, and you have some cases 48 hours to prepare for that unfamiliar opponent, or maybe 4 or 5 days if it's coming off a Saturday Sunday game. So I think we might see, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more coaches try to schedule tough in late February, mid to late February, like Michigan and Duke did, to toughen their teams on a neutral court, NCAA tournament conditions, against a foe that they're likely to not be familiar with. And that's going to be an unfamiliar foe that they're going to play really throughout the NCAA tournament until you get to situations where there are so many teams, like 10 teams from the Big 12, let's say, or Big 10, and you're going to face an opponent for the second time. But you never know if or when that's going to occur. But you're going to have to beat a tough team. And even if you lose to a tough team, like I take nothing away from Michigan losing the other day because they were tested. And again, it's not all that terrible going into the conference tournament having won, 3 of the last 4 instead of 4 of your last 4.
Well, there's probably 6 or 8 teams that are no more than 2 to 3 points rated differently. I mean, they're that close. There's so many good teams this year. I mean, we mentioned Iowa State before. We mentioned Houston. Now they're going to probably, any play, any official's call, a turnover, a 3-point shot that should go in or shouldn't go in. So, I mean, what about strength of schedule? We talk about that frequently in other sports.
Yep.
I think strength of schedule is actually the most important factor, because when you're playing cream puffs or teams that are, especially when they have this stat that's quad 1 wins and losses.
Yes.
Yep.
That, I think that's an important stat. How do these teams, let's say the top 10 teams that we're looking at to win it all, how do they rank in these quad 1 wins?
Almost always in and around the top 10.
Yeah.
That's
right.
one of the reasons they're ranked there. That
The
NCAA
problem with that, and again, it goes to at-large bids and smaller mid-major conferences, is they don't have the number of opportunities to schedule games against quad 1 teams. So you might find, let's say, a team like Purdue. Purdue might be 4-4 against quad 1 teams. Well, that's great. That's 500. You may have a smaller team or a mid-major team or, an 8th place team in the SEC, which has, only 5 games against quad 1 teams, and they're 4-1. So they've won 80% of their 5 opportunities. Purdue's won 50%. They've had more opportunities to win, and all they could do was 500. So that's a little bit of a negative. And once again, it's a way of getting, and again, it's all about money. It always has been. And it's a way of getting more teams from the major conferences into the tournament with at-large bids, because the better teams are going to play better teams within their conference multiple times. So therefore, instead of choosing 7 teams from the Big 10, you're choosing 10 teams. So that's 3 bids from the mid-majors that normally would have gone to them 10 years ago.
Jim, don't you think that you mentioned strength of schedule, and we know how important it is in football for sure. We're talking college basketball here now, where these teams are playing 30 games a season. But if you live in a neighborhood where all of the teams you're playing against are these Power 4 conferences, and the other neighborhood you live in are the teams that are not Power 4 conferences, doesn't the strength of schedule speak for itself by the scheduling, depending upon where it is you're playing your basketball games? If you're a Power 4 conference, you're likely not to face a terribly weak strength of schedule. Even if you're a bottom rung team, you're still going to take on the big boys.
Yeah, that was the old issue with the RPI. And it's the same thing like in another way that teams manipulate their schedules in college football. Why do you see SEC teams playing their FCS opponents in November? Okay, the weak team, the ones that they end up winning 50-6, because they know that a win there won't hurt them. Whereas you might have an Auburn and Alabama, let's say, when they're good facing off against each other, one of those teams is going to lose. So teams get to move up. Well, the old RPI, the NET ratings, they all benefit the stronger conferences who, as you say, Mark, by default are going to play a tougher schedule, because they're going to end up going 18-1 in non-conference play and maybe face one or two opponents in there, and then they're going to go 8-8 in conference play, and their strength of schedule is still going to be top 50.
So the key to what Jim said then is, how do you fare in these games against the Giants, the Davids and the Goliaths? If you got a team that is a part of the conference, major four conferences, and they get clobbered, I mean, they're obviously not going to be in this tournament, but does that make then their strength of schedule bad, or does it make more to what Andy alluded to, what used to be the RPI rankings and how your performance was against those teams?
Well, okay, let me figure out if I'm looking at this correctly. Michigan quad 1 wins or 11-1, and against quad 2 9-1. That's pretty damn good. But Arizona is pretty close, and so is Duke. And then Iowa State had done really well against the 2s, as has Connecticut. But the 1s, they've had a couple of losses. However, you can excuse that. You got 1s and 2s might be actually that close, and I'm not sure how they measure that. But then you go down this list, and look at
Alabama.
This Virginia team is 6-2 against 1s and 7-1 against 2s. Michigan State, I mean, I don't know how different the 1s and 2s come up in these rankings on this particular chart, but I would have to give anybody that it's. I mean, these rankings look absolutely perfect when you look at it, except you might have to boost a team like Virginia. What'd you say, Alabama?
Arkansas, and BYU. 1-8 against quad 1, 6-7 against quad 2.
Well, actually, they have I guess they have a thing called quad 1A.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, this is the 11-1, but it's 5-1. So that means that they're 6-0 outside of quad 1A, but they're 5-1 in quad 1A. So I guess it's quad 1A, quad 1B.
Do you know what? Yeah. Do you know what the definition is for quad 1 and quad 1A, Greg?
I haven't. This is the first time.
Virginia is 4-0 against quad 1A.
Yeah,
which is pretty damn good.
And they're going to be playing at Duke tomorrow.
Yes.
So we'll really find out about Virginia.
Saturday.
And of course, this is the first year with the old coach and the old way of running their offense, and the new coach that comes in and changes the scheme. And they're playing good ball, Virginia. But they could really use a big win now. We don't have it yet. I'm still waiting for it. I haven't seen
that's at Duke, I believe, right?
I'm sure we could.
Saturday at 12, I think.
Hey, Jim, let me say this about the quad teams, and you bring up a good point. The biggest decider is how they do against quad 1 teams. If you take a look at all the guys we're talking about or are being considered, they almost all destroy even quad 2 teams. The quad 2 teams are the guys that maybe are close enough to be in with the elite, but aren't quite. But they beat those teams, and that's what separates them from being in that quad 2 list. So if you take a look at all of the rank,
I'm not sure how they.
Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, I don't know how they determine quad 2 versus quad A or quad 3. I have to believe also a lot of those quad teams are probably the bottom half of those major conferences who don't qualify as quad A because they can't beat the Dukes and the Virginias, but they can beat the Wake Forest or the South Carolinas, the lower half. So they still have. Now I may be wrong about this, but I would still think that those teams in the quad 2 are probably the lower tier major conference teams that still work out better than the top teams, for example, in the MAC or the Mountain West.
Well, the separator there, Andy, is actually their win-loss records. So everybody that's currently in the top 10 is a quad 1 team, and teams that are knocking on the door but aren't quite there are likely quad 2 teams. So, it's how you're faring against the Giants is really truthfully what it comes down to. And how you do against the quad 2 teams is meaningful because you can't afford losses against teams like that. So the NCAA tournament committee puts their greatest strength, they weigh their greatest strength on their performance in quad 1 games.
Yeah, and there is no.
What site is this, Greg?
It's an obscure site that it's called Bart Torvik.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bart
he's-
Torvik, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He's
we
like
all-
like a Ken Palm.
Yes, he is. And
Yeah.
Ken Palm has it on his site as well. You can find them
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
But there is no definition right now of what a quad 1A is.
No, but
It's
you'll notice
pro-
the commonality is every quad 1 team, they're all the team with the superior win-loss records.
Yeah.
I mean, look, like if we're thinking of Louisville, hey, maybe I'll take Louisville, and you see they're 0-7 against quad 1A teams, you're probably going, well, maybe that's not the team that I want to take to make a run to the Final Four.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
No, I would not. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, let that
How
40
when
to
you
1
have
go.
all these other quality teams, you're gonna run into games where a team that's very good is going to have an off night. That's going to happen,
Yeah.
and they're going to go away. But you're also going to have a team that is a little bit less rated against this, like we had years ago with Connecticut, and they kind of blew away all the stats and everything because they had that, I can't remember his name, that super guard that just took over everything and they won it all. But during the stats, the regular season were not as high as others.
Hey, guys, I know Jim's going to have to
I
run.
was just going to say, Greg, go back up a little bit to Illinois because I think that's a very interesting case. Look at Illinois. They are 6-5. They have had 11 games, which may be the most number of games against quad 1A teams on the list. 6-5. I know Kansas is 6-4. A team like Illinois, that basically says on almost half their schedule, they've been playing quad 1A teams.
Well, what's unusual about Illinois, Andy, is the Ken Palm rankings that I've talked about before in the past about offensive and defensive efficiency rankings, which have picked the winner in all but one of the NCAA tournaments since 2002. You'll find 11 teams on that list here this particular weekend. Illinois is not. And they're not on that list, even though they have the number 1 overall ranked offensive efficiency. What they lack is the defensive efficiency. They're number 30 overall, and it's not enough to cut the mustard for this.
Weren't they in the top 25 last week?
They put. You talking about the polls?
Deficiency.
The defensive efficiency.
Yeah, but they're number 30 right now as we're speaking, Andy.
Right, but I'm saying, weren't they higher than that prior to this past week?
Yes, they were, and that's why they weren't even on this top 11 list, but they were knocking on the door, and it's their offensive efficiency that really carries the weight for this basketball team.
Well, the one thing we are going to have to look at is what happened last year and what happens this year, and how those stats hold up based on, and who knows, maybe they'll hold up even more so because of the strength is now with the upper echelon teams. Because with the portal era, a lot of historical stats, unfortunately, are just not going to be the same. Maybe some will work, but I'd look really close at last year and this year and see if we can, maybe next year, see if we can find like a new trend that's developing with the new portal era.
Yeah. If any of you guys had a chance to look ahead to Saturday's card, I know it's difficult for me to do when we do the show, even 2 or 3 days in advance, because there's so many other metrics that come into play. But just before we move on to the NBA, was there any game that you were aware of that you thought you might be looking hard at on Saturday's card?
Well, just right off the bat,
I think the Duke Virginia game would be interesting.
Well, I agree with that. I don't know what the number is or would be, but I could have looked at it, I guess, but it would be hard to find somebody that's actually booking it.
Virginia just did move into the Ken Palm top 11 teams too, by the way.
I think Virginia's, if they're getting enough points, I mean, and they're playing at Duke, I assume.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I would probably have to take Virginia plus the points. I don't know what the points are though, but that's the side I would be looking to go to if the points give me some value, but I don't know what that spread is. But
it'll be big. We know that.
How
big? The interesting thing is the other night, Virginia was hosting North Carolina State. And I like this Virginia team. And I played Virginia in that game, Mark, and this is something that you probably looked at. the concern I would have had about Virginia is, are they caught looking ahead to that big game against Duke on Saturday that might affect their performance against North Carolina State? Not the case. Virginia won coming. They were focused. They weren't thinking about the next game. They were thinking about the game they were playing that night. Now, will that translate into a good effort against Duke? Not sure, but Duke will probably look at this game against Virginia as another one of their challenges because they're a conference foe, and it could have some determination as to how these teams advance throughout the conference tournament. But there's nothing not to like about this Virginia team.
Ken White's power ratings? What would they make the line? I don't have those numbers.
Here, let me see if I can bring it up here, guys.
Even Ken Palm, that would be actually very good also.
Another key game on Saturday is going to, for a team on the bubble, is going to be Seton Hall at Connecticut. So Connecticut coming off the big win against St. John's, Seton Hall needing, a win like that probably puts them in the tournament. A loss, and they're probably still on the outside because I believe that's the case. I believe they are on the outside still of the bubble. So that'll be an early game on Saturday with a big spread. So maybe
where
that's
is the Duke Virginia game, guys, at Saturday?
That's at Duke, and it looks, Mark, from the numbers that you have in the recent playbook, Duke would be about 11.6, and they have a 6-point home court advantage to add to that. So if Ken's number, and they're usually very good, you're looking at a 17-point spread against.
No, there you go.
You'll never see that.
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
But that's how highly he has Duke rated over everybody.
Anything over 10, I'm on
Yeah.
Virginia.
You're gonna get over 10.
Anything over 10, I'm taking Virginia, and I'd probably take a little bit of a sprinkle on the money line.
So if Chris Andrews and the guys in Vegas are listening, they'll open that game up at 10.5 and see
if
which
Chris
side
Andrews,
the guys go.
Well, he probably wouldn't listen to me because there are a lot of big bettors who would probably lay it. So he's not gonna do that.
Another team that need to win, or two more teams, bubble teams that may get good odds that you might want to take a look at because they're on the road, will be UCLA at Minnesota and Missouri at Mississippi State. So because they're on the road, those lines might not be that big. And you might want to take a look at two teams that are desperate for wins because they can't lose. They can't lose.
I think Missouri might be favored on the road. I don't.
Oh yeah, they should be.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know about UCLA.
There's a good point. If they're not, I mean, that's a 13-15 team, Minnesota, but you might be right. They may not even be favored in the game. And some people have them in the tournament. So, and they can't afford to lose to Minnesota.
No.
I would.
So that doesn't mean they're going to win.
I would not be laying points on the road.
Not with those two. Well, with Missouri, I could because I think they are a quality team. I can't say that about UCLA.
And Texas is another team. We just talked about they're losing to Florida. They're at Texas A&M, who beat them earlier this year. And right now, most of the bracketologists have both teams in, even though Texas A&M should be in better shape than Texas. So that could be a really big game for Texas.
A great lesson here about people listening to this is see how different it is to handicap games at this point in the season versus a month ago or 2 months ago, when you didn't have to worry about all that. It makes a difference of who's motivated at this point. Everything changes when you get to this point.
Yeah, there's so many different boxes right now in play.
Oh yeah. It's I mean, there's nobody that can explain St. John's getting absolutely destroyed last night at Connecticut, except the fact that Connecticut knows they've been playing with their food a lot, and they knew they had to make a statement, and they did.
Yeah,
well,
back-to-back statements.
Surprised at the result.
Villanova.
The degree of the result was the big surprise.
Oh, huge, unbelievable. Yeah. Yes.
And remember, these coaches, they know where the bracketologists have them as far as first in, first out, securely in, etc. That's what's going to make a lot of these conference tournament games, I think, even more interesting than before, because you've got so many teams that you could make decent cases against. And when you compare, for example, a Minnesota against an Ohio State or something like that, if they meet in the conference tournament, those teams are going to have they will be, a lot of these teams are going to know that there are potential at-large bids on the line.
Let me ask you guys, do you think the odds makers or the Ken Palms of the world will take the Michigan loss against Duke, make that meaningful, or accept it for what it was?
I
Accept
don't
it
think,
for what it was.
I don't think it matters much. I mean,
Yeah.
those two teams played 10 times. I think they're going to go 5-5.
5-5. Yeah.
Well, here's a real unique stat that happened in the game, guys, and I hadn't covered this before the game started, and it ended up helping to pad the bankroll, if you will, per se. But that was only there were 6 games that were played between when number 1, 2, 3, and 4 teams were all playing on the same day, and they were all playing each other, 1 versus 2 versus 3 versus 4.
You're talking regular season based on current rankings at the time.
I'm talking even going into the postseason. There was a regular season, but including the postseason, there were 7 games where all 4 teams had played, and amazingly, the number 1 seed in those games had lost every game.
Whether they were playing the 2, 3, or 4.
Houston, Duke, Michigan, and
Yeah.
Right. It didn't matter who they were playing.
It turned everything upside down.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, it did. Right.
And Michigan was number 1 going into the game against.
And I think what you saw there is going to be what we see in the Final 4 and the Final 8 and the Final 16, because these teams are all so close that a missed free throw or a bad call by an official or a turnover.
Yeah.
These games are all so close. But when they play a team that's ranked really low, the question's going to be, are they going to take them seriously or not?
Hey, I'm going to hop over to the NBA right now because I know Jim's got very important. He's got a place to be at here soon, and I want to ask Jim before he gets out of here, talking about the NBA this basketball season here. Do you feel the loss of James Harden to the Cavaliers is instrumental for this basketball team? Although it's been said he'll be coming back, he'll be playing injured. How important is that for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Jim?
It's huge. It's huge because he came over to fill a hole. And they had to give up something to get him. And it's huge. But he's got to get pumped. If he comes back for the playoffs in reasonable health, that'll make a big difference. I think it's a huge, huge loss.
Well, to his credit, he's saying he's going to play. It's a non-shooting hand, so that's one thing. But for a point guard, you still need both of your hands, I guess, to control the basketball. One of the biggest surprise teams in the NBA, or biggest surprise stories, I read this morning. It's a publication called Better Day. And for our listeners out there, it's really astute publication.
And that's BETTOR.
OR, correct.
Better
and Andy, did you read it, Andy?
Yeah, you forwarded a copy of that to me, I guess a couple of months ago, and it's a really good, insightful read every day.
Well, the Jaylen Brown story I'm going to talk about, they alluded to today. It was absolutely wild. But Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics has 42 consecutive defensive rebounds in a row without an offensive rebound. Think about that. His last 42 rebounds have all been defensive rebounds, 0 on the offensive side of the basketball. Absolutely incredible. Last night against Denver, he had 11 rebounds. They were all on the defensive side. And they computed this, that 20% of the rebounds should go to the offense. That makes the probability of this occurring 45,000 to 1 is what Jaylen Brown is doing.
So bet that it occurs again sometime before the year 2100.
Yes, it will the next time.
Well, maybe that means he's not following his shots.
Maybe it's
or that he never misses.
Yeah, I was going to say never miss it. Yeah. Or that he's always in position. As soon as a teammate takes a shot, he's running to the other end of the court.
Jim, what's the biggest surprise team in the NBA to you so far this basketball season here?
I'd say that maybe the Pistons.
Yeah,
I think they have to be on the list. They have almost as many wins now as they had last year.
Yeah, I'd say they have surprised a lot of people. By the way, I think that the Tigers in baseball are going to be kind of the same thing. I think they're going to be very good.
Yep.
Well, Jim has a love for Detroit going on here right now.
I don't have a love for Detroit.
Greg, I think the obvious answer here might be San Antonio for the most surprising team in the NBA. They had 34 wins last year. They have 41 right now, and they're on this, I think, 12-game win streak. Are they for real, the San Antonio Spurs, Greg?
Well, that's what I hear. Of course, I don't follow the NBA like I used to.
Right.
They are talking about this being the best San Antonio team since the glory years. So
Yep.
I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that's what they're saying.
Well, the record certainly showed, and let's go back to Detroit. 43-14, best record in the East, 5.5 game lead over number 2 Boston. You look at the West, Oklahoma City. They are 45-15, 2 games better than Spurs, 42-16, and then the number 3 team is 5.5 games back, and it's a very good Houston Rockets team. So, right now, OKC, San Antonio, and Detroit are distancing themselves from the remainder of the NBA. Now, whether that'll continue, into the playoffs, we don't know, because unfortunately in basketball, probably as much as any other sport, if not more, with the possible exception of losing a starting pitcher for an extended period of time, injuries in the NBA are so impactful for key players because it's a game that's only played by 5 players at a time.
Last year, Cavaliers were really a good team, and then they suffered all those injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, they had 3 starters sitting on the bench in that one game. I think it was game 2 against Indiana, and it turned out ugly because in the fourth quarter, the remaining players could not keep up. They were exhausted.
They had 3 players out against Milwaukee Wednesday. Harden, being the one here, obviously, but also Evan Mobley was out for the Cavaliers, and
lost by 2.
I'm sorry,
they lost by 2.
And they lost by 2, right?
So those were obviously key players who were missed. Of course, I think Milwaukee's also missing Giannis, I believe. So
yes, but it's the plight of the Cavaliers. The injuries, they come at the worst of times when they were building momentum and looking like they were going to get back to last year's status, which they still might do with James Harden. Who knows? That way that works out. So that being the case here, guys, with the NBA, Greg, I know you're not an NBA guy, so you won't be buying any futures, but Andy, any futures that you'd be looking at far in the NBA right now where you'd find that you're going to get a big bang for your buck?
Well, I don't know what the current odds are. Let's see. I think Greg has them up there. Cleveland 11-1. I don't know that I would play them to win the NBA title, so they're probably about half that, but I could see them challenging in the East when they get healthy.
I agree 100% with that. I agree 100% with that. Jim, what do you think?
What are the odds of Tatum coming back for Boston?
That's the key question for them. Yeah,
because that could make a monster difference with what happens in the East.
I thought I read about a week or 2 ago. He said he expects to be back for the playoffs, but we don't know. There's still a lot of time left, and we haven't gotten I haven't gotten a more recent update on that.
I like the Cavaliers if Harden can come back, and these are ifs, and then of course Tatum can make a difference. So there's a big issue with the injuries of those 2 guys, but the Spurs and the Nuggets in the West to me are interesting. I do think that we could see an upset out in the West with the Spurs or the Nuggets winning the West.
The latest I have on Tatum from a couple of weeks ago, he was limited participant in a practice with the Boston G League squad. And then the next one, I see the headline, he checks out well after practice with the Celtics, I guess, on February 12th. So it sounds like, and he's coming off that Achilles injury. So it sounds as though with the playoffs still basically, 7 weeks away, the middle part of April, I think they're probably looking towards him coming back for maybe playing a couple of games at the end of the regular season to get back into shape if all goes well and be available for the playoffs. So what that means is you may not want to take a chance on the Celtics to do all that well as far as the division goes, but maybe if he comes back healthy, and remember, because he'll be fresh, right, although he's coming off that tough injury. Boston, if these prognoses are correct, they could be an Eastern Conference winner.
Well, Jim, I'm going to let you get out of here.
Again, remember, they have a lot of experience over Detroit, who's currently in the lead.
Yeah, you can't take anything away from Detroit. I mean, they played very well and they're dangerous, but it's going to be a real battle out there. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell our listeners out there that if you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to hit that like button, ring the bell, and head over to the Proline TV community channel and click on the join button. You're going to like that. You can find selections from Jim Feist, Andy Iskoe, Greg DePalma, and myself. And that's going to put the final wraps on this edition of Mark Lawrence Against the Spread. Until next week, once again, for our cast of experts, this is Mark Lawrence.